The Subcommittee on Oversight will come to order. In front of you are packets containing the written testimony, biographies, and truth and testimony disclosures of today's witness panel. Now I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Good morning and welcome. This hearing, titled Operating Unmanned Aircraft Systems in the National Airspace System, Assessing Research and Development Efforts to Ensure Safety, is the first hearing for the 113th Congress's Subcommittee on Oversight. During our break, our name changed, but our General and Special Investigatory Authority to review and study on a continuing basis all laws, programs, and government activities dealing with or involving non-military research and development remains the same. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our witnesses today. We really appreciate you guys being here. Also want to welcome our returning members and our new members, including the subcommittee's ranking member and distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Murphy. I look forward to working with you all, and Mr. Murphy, I look forward to working with you as my ranking member on this committee. Today's hearing focuses on integrating unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, into the national airspace. As a pilot, I am extremely interested in this issue. Specifically, we hope to gain a better understanding of the safety risk, the current technological obstacles, and key research and development efforts being undertaken to overcome those obstacles. UAS has garnered a great deal of attention lately. In fact, if you watch the news this morning, there was a lot of news about this issue. In January, PBS's Nova aired a documentary entitled Rise of the Drones. Last week's Time magazine cover carried the same title. And of course, the administration's use of drones for targeting terrorists to confront our war on terrorism has come to be a central issue in the confirmation hearing of the proposed CIA Director, the nominee John Brennan. However, privacy issues and military applications of UAS are beyond the scope of this hearing. I use the term unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, instead of UAV or drone because it is a more complete and an accurate term. As the name suggests, UAS are complex systems made up of not only aircraft, but as well as supporting ground, air, and communications infrastructure. UAS comes in a variety of shapes and sizes and can carry out a wide range of missions. Aviation has come a long way in a relatively short period of time, thanks to American innovation and ingenuity. The list of American pioneers of aviation and aerospace is very long. You may not know the details of their achievements, but I'm sure you'll recognize names such as Clyde Cessna, James McDonnell and Donald Douglas, Howard Hughes, William Boeing, Charles Lindbergh, Kelly Johnson, just to name a few. Unmanned aircraft are the next step in the evolution of modern aviation, which all began with two American brothers, Kitty Hawk, in 1903. Just as UAS have sparked a revolution in military affairs, they will also very likely transform civilian and commercial sectors. The Teal Group, an aerospace and defense industry market intelligence firm, predicts that America will spend over $49 billion on UAS just over the next decade. In 2010, the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International estimated that over the next 15 years, more than 23,000 UAS jobs totaling $1.6 billion in wages could very well be created. This does not include the tens of thousands of secondary jobs in sector manufacturing, software development, and other complementary industries. That said, the addition of thousands or tens of thousands of additional aircraft into the national airspace certainly poses safety concerns for all of us. There's no guarantee that accidents will not occur, but we need to take every precaution to reduce the risk involved in the UAS integration. Last year, Congress directed that federal agencies, including the FAA and NASA, collaborate in accelerating the integration of UAS into the national airspace. The FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012 contains provisions designed to promote and facilitate the use of civilian unmanned aircraft. We on this subcommittee know that you have been working hard and have made progress toward meeting the prescribed objectives, but we also know that there are many unresolved issues, both technologically and regulatorily. Again, our goal here today is to better understand the research that's underway to overcome these technological issues and to mitigate the risk involved with UAS integration into the national airspace system. We are particularly interested in hearing about any advances toward eliminating vulnerabilities in command and control communications, new sense and avoid capabilities, and agreements on technological standards. The Washington Post recently reported that at least 9 American UAS crashes occurred near civilian airports overseas as a result of pilot error, mechanical failure, software bugs, or poor coordination with air traffic controllers. In August of 2010, the New York Times reported that a Navy UAS violated airspace over Washington, D.C. when operators lost control due to a software issue. While this may be more acceptable in remote areas overseas, we need to do much better here in our own skies. Pardon me. The threat of command and control link jamming, GPS navigational single spoofing, and system hacking is a real concern that has to be addressed before any UAS integration into the national airspace. Overcoming these challenges will require significant research and development investments by both the public and private sector. Given our nation's current financial state, this demands more efficient coordination between all stakeholders. I now recognize Ranking Member, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Murphy, for an opening statement. You're recognized, sir, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am excited about the opportunity to work with you on this important subcommittee. I particularly want to compliment you for your leadership in calling this hearing today. I hope it won't surprise you that on this issue I will be echoing a lot of your same comments, and I thought your opening statement very articulate. Addressing the research and development efforts regarding the integration of unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, into the national airspace is a serious issue and presents daunting technical challenges, possible economic opportunities, as the chairman mentioned, but also potential threats to our civil liberties and safety. I know firsthand what a complicated this issue it is and the challenges it presents. An unmanned aerial vehicle unit operates out of my district at Hancock Field Air National Guard Base on the military side. Now, while these are commonly referred to as drones, the future of unmanned vehicles goes far beyond what that word implies. There is a real human element to unmanned flight of this kind, just as there's an increasing robotic element to manned flight. There are tremendous potential technical risks and public concerns associated with integrating UAS into the national airspace, and my constituents express those concerns on a daily basis. These aircraft represent an emergent technology with broad possible uses among many industries and government agencies. They could potentially provide benefits to many industries, from our farmers to firefighters, search and rescue, researchers, meteorologists, and scientists. However, regardless of their specific use, we need to ensure that unmanned aerial systems operate in our national airspace safely and securely. But first, they must overcome the technical challenges that exist, and indeed, there are many. A 2012 GAO report detailed several critical areas which must be addressed before UASs can fly safely in our skies. Chief among them is the stark reality that the technology to provide unmanned aircraft the ability to, quote, sense and avoid other aircraft and airborne objects does not currently exist, and this is a serious concern. Other technical challenges range from lost link scenarios where communication between the pilot and UAS is severed as a result of environmental or technical causes, or even by human actors, whether they're inadvertent or intentional. Acquiring dedicated radio frequency spectrum in order to secure the continuous communication for UAS operations, particularly as the spectrum needs of the onboard sensors expand, is another challenge, and I look forward to our witnesses addressing some of these challenges in depth today. There's a real and critical human element of unmanned flight of any kind. Highly skilled pilots who once sat in the cockpits now sit in ground stations, detached from the sensation of flight and the G-forces, while remaining integrally connected to the outcome of the mission. We need to ensure that these human elements, from proper training and medical certifications, are appropriately incorporated into UAS integration as well. A year ago, the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012 was signed into law. It required the FAA to establish an integration plan permitting unmanned aerial systems to operate in the United States by September of 2015. I look forward to hearing from the FAA today on their progress in the last year, as well as a realistic report on what challenges remain and where the FAA stands in meeting these deadlines. Now, 20 years ago, cell phone technology was in its infancy. And within 10 years, these devices has transformed from simple mobile phones to the pocket accessories used to help small businesses and owners expand. While security and safety concerns about the use and growth of these devices, they almost all have cameras on them now, have existed since the beginning, their proliferation and technical advancements have not slowed. Today, there are more than 315 million cell phones in the United States alone, and most of these devices not only carry those cameras, but also GPS or global positioning satellite capabilities as well. And while these technical advancements have not been hindered or restricted, there are reasonable and legitimate limits on the use of cell phones in hospitals, secure facilities, on airplanes, and while driving your car. So this should be an analogy to us. Despite all of the recognized challenges with UAS, whether we like it or not, for better or for worse, this technology is here and it's not going away. Both the public sector and commercial sector remains interested in this technology, and that interest continues to evolve and expand. As a result, we must develop the necessary framework to handle UAS emergence safely and securely. We must also ensure the protection of individual rights and personal privacy in the air and on the ground. Like any new technology, it is impossible to predict the ultimate path UASs will take. In tackling the tremendous task of ensuring the safe and secure operation and integration of UAS into the domestic airspace, we are once again presented with the challenge of balancing all these important issues. There are private sector issues which might help grow the economy. The government's interest is to provide domestic security, and we as representatives are charged with safeguarding the public's interest and protecting their civil liberties. Developing an effective regulatory framework could be an arduous process, but this hearing is one step towards ensuring that this is happening in a timely and effective manner. It is our responsibility, and we don't take it lightly, to recognize the need for oversight to ensure the proper steps are being taken, proper procedures are being created, and federal agencies are meeting the critical timelines to address the rapid emergence of these UAS systems in our national airspace. And that's why I again want to compliment the Chairman. Thank you for your leadership in calling this hearing today. I want to thank the witnesses, and I look forward to your testimony. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Maffei, thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you as we go forward through this Congress. And just from your statements, I can tell that you and I are going to be close colleagues protecting civil liberties and privacy issues, because those issues are extremely important to me and have been for a long time, well, since I've been here and before I came here. This time I'd like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Dr. Carlin Toner, who is the Director of Joint Planning and Development Office at the Federal Aviation Administration. Our next witness is Dr. Edgar Wagner, Director of the Integrated Systems Research Program Office at NASA. And the final witness today is Dr. Gerald Dillingham, Director of Civil Aviation Issues at the Government Accountability Office at GAO. As our witnesses should know, spoken testimony is limited to 5 minutes each, after which the members of this committee will have 5 minutes each to ask questions. Now, I now recognize Dr. Toner to present her testimony. Dr. Toner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Brown, Congressman Maffei, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the Federal Aviation Administration's current research in support of unmanned aircraft systems integration into our national airspace system. I'm the director of the Joint Planning and Development Office and will touch upon the role my office plays in facilitating and coordinating UAS research efforts throughout the government with partners including the Departments of Commerce, Defense, and Homeland Security, NASA, and the FAA. I'd also like to take this opportunity to speak to you about the solicitation that the FAA announced yesterday, requesting interested state and local governments, eligible universities, and other public entities to develop 6 UAS research and test sites around the country. This solicitation was done in accordance with the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012, which directed the FAA to establish the test sites in order to conduct the critical research that will help determine how best to safely integrate these systems into our NAS. Once the sites are selected, which will be later this year, we expect to learn how UAS operate in the different environments and how they impact air traffic operations. The test sites will also inform the agency as we develop standards for certifying unmanned aircraft and determine the necessary air traffic requirements. In addition to the test sites, FAA is publishing a notice in the Federal Register asking the public to review draft privacy language and provide input. The broad outline of FAA's privacy proposal will require each test site to ensure their privacy policies address the following: notice or awareness, choice and consent, access and participation, integrity and security, and finally, enforcement mechanisms to deal with violations of these policies. The FAA thinks the test sites will provide important information that will inform our UAS integration process moving forward. With respect to FAA's research and development efforts, we're working in 4 areas: sense and avoid, control and communication, maintenance and repair, and human factors. Research in all 4 areas is critical, as the opening statements have mentioned. My written statement contains more details on each area, but I'd like to take a moment to highlight the work we are doing with NASA in the area of control and communication. The FAA is collaborating with NASA on prototype architecture that will be used to develop a high-level security risk assessment. Our joint work will define the network architecture and candidate security mechanisms for protecting the air-ground communications that can eventually be used to develop security standards and requirements. Likewise, all of our partner agencies have mission-related incentives for UAS integration to succeed. The JPDO enables leveraging the research being done by different agencies to ensure that all agencies are aware of and can benefit from the work being done throughout the administration. This synergy, such as the FAA-NASA partnership I described, ensures that all research dollars are being used as effectively as possible to reach our common goal of safe UAS integration. I certainly understand the desire to safely integrate UAS into the NAS. Because FAA's mission is to ensure the safety and efficiency of the NAS, integration can only occur to the extent FAA is satisfied that the safety of the NAS will not be degraded by the introduction of these new aircraft. This is an extremely complex endeavor, but FAA has been challenged with complex problems in the past, and the aviation safety record is a testament to the fact that we have been able to meet those challenges. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Toner. I appreciate your staying within 5 minutes. It was perfect. Thank you so much. It's excellent. Now I recognize Dr. Wagner for 5 minutes.
Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Maffei, and members of the subcommittee, I want to thank you for this opportunity to testify on NASA's research and development activities to ensure safety in the operation of unmanned aircraft systems, or UASs, in our national airspace. There's a growing demand to routinely fly unmanned aircraft in the NAS, our national airspace system, and I'm sure that you're aware that unmanned aircraft are increasingly being used for applications where it's not feasible or practical to rely on extended human-piloted flights. We often refer to these as the dull, dangerous, or dirty missions. The application of unmanned aircraft to perform these missions is just part of what's driving the critical need for safe, less restrictive access to the NAS. Safe routine access represents enhanced capabilities for the public sector, but also the promise of new capabilities for commercial or civil aviation sectors as well. NASA is performing research in the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate that provides an opportunity to develop and transition our concepts, technologies, algorithms, and knowledge to the FAA and other stakeholders to help them define the algorithms, regulations, standards for safe routine NAS access. In my testimony this morning, I want to make 3 key points. I'll define the research that NASA is doing to help solve this problem, how we're working to transition our research results to the stakeholder community, and looking towards the future, what NASA considers some of the areas where additional research is required. So one might ask, why aren't UAS routinely allowed in the NAS now? For unmanned aircraft, access to the NAS is hampered by various regulatory and operational challenges, making it difficult to establish common, applicable standards and requirements. Now, the FAA has established a process for enabling public agencies to request a certificate of authorization or waiver, referred to as a COA, in order to operate unmanned aircraft in the NAS. As a matter of fact, this is how NASA receives permission to perform our science missions and fly in the NAS. However, for civil, non-public UAS operations in the NAS, the FAA requires a special airworthiness certificate in the experimental category. Experimental certificates are limited to an individual vehicle rather than a class of vehicles, and severely limit the uses of the UAS. For example, commercial operations are specifically excluded under an experimental certificate. The majority of the research work that NASA is performing is organized under the UAS integration in the NAS project, and is focused in the following areas: sensitive void separation assurance interoperability, developing reliable communication systems and protocols, design of ground control stations and their displays for effective and safe operation, and the requirements necessary to define criteria for avionics, communication systems, and ground control station certification. In each of these areas, we're addressing critical research questions and delivering research results to our stakeholders. Now, the work that NASA is performing is dependent on external government agency and stakeholder interfaces as well. I'd like to identify 3 key interfaces where we're significantly involved: the UAS Executive Committee, or the UAS XCOM, the Joint Planning and Development Office, the JPDO, and the UAS Aviation Rulemaking Committee, the UAS ARC. In each of these cases, NASA is playing a significant role supporting the activities from the executive level down to our working level subject matter experts. In addition to this, we've built effective partnerships with the FAA, the Department of Defense, and RTCA's Special Committee 203 that's focused on unmanned aircraft systems. Finally, I'd like to identify some future research areas where NASA is undertaking studies to evaluate the implications of safe integration of UAS into the next generation air transportation system, commonly referred to as NextGen. So understanding the trade-offs between remote control and computerized automation of unmanned aircraft, referred to as levels of autonomy, is a relatively immature research area that we think could generate some additional focus. In addition, the second area I'd like to point out is that of airborne-based sensitive void. Issues associated with sensitive void are particularly relevant when the aircraft involved are not under positive air traffic control. So we know about the work that the DoD has performed. We'd like to assess that relative to civil applications. So in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Granted, NASA doesn't build unmanned aircraft, nor do we develop policy or the regulatory framework for their safe operation in the NAS. However, through our research we conduct in cooperation with other government agencies, industry, and academia, NASA is addressing barrier technology challenges for safe UAS integration in the NAS and ensuring that our research is effectively coordinated with and transitioned to the UAS stakeholder community. Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Murphy, other members of the subcommittee, this concludes my prepared statement, and I'll be pleased to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. Appreciate it very much. Excellent testimony from both you guys, and I'm sure Dr. Dillingham is going to give us an equally excellent testimony. Sir, you are recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Dillingham.
We'll do what we can, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Murphy, members of the subcommittee, as you requested, My testimony addresses 3 areas related to integrating UAS into the national airspace system. First, the roles, responsibility, and coordination among the key stakeholders. Second, progress in complying with the UAS requirements in the 2012 FAA Reauthorization Act. And third, R&D efforts by FAA and others to address key integration challenges. With regard to the first area of stakeholder roles, responsibility, and coordination, Congress has tasked FAA to lead the effort of integrating UAS into the national airspace system, and successful integration requires the involvement of several other agencies, including DoD, DHS, and NASA, as well as industry stakeholders. FAA has taken several important steps to facilitate collaboration among the stakeholders. For example, they've established several working groups, various memorandums of understanding, and cooperative research and development agreements to address a range of integration issues. FAA has also recently created the UAS Integration Office with 1 executive to coordinate USA efforts across the FAA. Although we did not evaluate the effectiveness of these efforts, our work on other federal and industry collaborations, such as the implementation of the Next Generation Air Transportation System, has shown that early and continuous involvement of stakeholders is critical to project success. With regard to the implementation status of the FAA reauthorization provisions, our written statement contains a chart of selected requirements and the status of FAA's efforts to meet them. Most of the requirements must be achieved between May 2012 and December 2015. Our work shows that while FAA has efforts underway to meet these requirements, they have completed only 2 of the 9 requirements with completion deadlines that have passed as of this morning. Of the deadlines missed, FAA has not yet established a program for the 6 UAS test sites or released the comprehensive plan. Stakeholders, including the Congress, consider these actions among the key gateways to moving closer to safe and efficient UAS integration. While it could be argued that some of the provisions are complex undertakings that require a significant amount of effort by FAA and the partner agencies, meeting established deadlines can help increase stakeholder confidence in FAA's ability to lead the UAS integration effort and contribute to the continued participation and collaboration among all stakeholders. Regarding research and development efforts, FAA's UAS RD Roadmap identifies the various organizations that have efforts underway to mitigate obstacles to prevent UAS from being allowed to operate safely and routinely in the NAS. Some of these obstacles and related research include vulnerabilities to UAS operations such as sense and avoid, command and control, including lost link, GPS jamming and spoofing, and human factors. While progress is being made to address these obstacles, the lack of necessary data has seriously hampered the development of safety, reliability, and performance standards, which are needed to validate the R&D efforts. In addition to the technical and R&D obstacles that I've cited, government and industry will need to work together to address issues related to the public acceptance of UAS in the NAS, especially as it relates to privacy and homeland security concerns. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Murphy, and members of the subcommittee, the potential impact of this industrial sector on the nation's aerospace industry and overall global competitiveness could be significant. As the chairman noted, in addition to their life protection and life-saving potential, according to an industry forecast, over the next decade, the worldwide market for government and commercial use of UAS could potentially grow to be worth $89 billion. And the United States could account for nearly 2/3 of the $28 billion for the projected R&D investment for UAS technologies. While this kind of growth, it will be critical for FAA to continue to make progress in integrating UAS into the national airspace system, and oversight hearings such as this one highlight the importance of issues that need to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Dillingham. You did an excellent job also. And all three witnesses, appreciate y'all being here and excellent testimony. And hopefully Dr. Dillingham's questions that they've brought up at GAO are going to be answered not only through this hearing, but also through written questions that we'll ask y'all as we go along. Reminding members of the committee rules limit questioning to 5 minutes each. The chair at this point will open the first round of questions, and the chair will recognize himself for 5 minutes. On December the 4th, 2011, the U.S. lost an RQ-170 Sentinel near Iran. Iranians claimed to have spoofed the global positioning system, GPS signal, that was in operation with that Sentinel. Last summer, Professor Humphreys from the University of Texas at Austin demonstrated that it is possible to spoof the GPS signals to take control of an unmanned aircraft. GAO's testimony states that that military GPS signals, unlike the non-military GPS signals, unlike the military GPS signals, are not encrypted, and transparency and predictability make them vulnerable to being counterfeited or spoofed. Ask what R&D is being conducted to address this concern, and are there any R&D gaps that you're aware of? Dr. Toner, if you could start off answering those questions, and Dr. Wagner, if you could fill in any gaps that Dr. Toner leaves out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the very careful experimentation that was conducted by Dr. Humphreys and his students in Texas. And I want to point out we are aware of those, and believe me, the security of the communication and control system is one of the key challenges we've looked at for UAS. And I mentioned in my testimony projects that we're working there. What I want to point out about Dr. Humphreys' experiments, and I believe in his papers he even points out that they were very carefully conducted and would be hard to repeat. That said, we must be cognizant. The FAA has initiated a group that is looking at spoofing and jamming. There is also position navigation and timing XCOM that looks across the government at GPS systems and would be concerned in that area. So we are working on multiple levels to address it.
Dr. Wagner?
Yes, sir. We're also aware of the work that Dr. Humphreys did at the University of Texas. And just to frame this problem, the issues with GPS is far bigger than just UAS. I mean, this would have economic implications. Our economy is run on GPS actually now. So we're aware of this. We're certainly in our work that we're working to make sure that there's adequate redundancies in any systems that we would test, so that its positioning is not only reliant on the GPS signal, and other situation awareness issues associated with that as well. Our focus is more on security of the command and control signal to the vehicle, and making sure that within the frequencies that we're operating in, that those are secure and the data that we're transmitting is reliable and is valid data. So from that point of view, we have a very robust research effort going on in that. As far as spoofing of the GPS signal, we're aware of it. We're cognizant of what Dr. Humphreys did, and it's part of our knowledge base and the constraints that we're operating under, but we don't have any particular research efforts going towards spoofing of the GPS signal.
Well, certainly this is of great concern to Americans, not only because of the safety just generally, but also because of if Dr. Humphreys and his students can spoof the GPS system, what could other nation states or terrorist groups do also? So will civil and commercial UAS operating in the national airspace use encrypted command control and navigation links? Dr. Toner?
The military today uses encrypted links, and I believe that that solution may not be as viable for the commercial market. That is the reason that so much research is being done today.
Okay, Dr. Wagner, you have any additions? No? Okay.
No, sir, no additions.
My time is just about out, so please answer this question. If in 2010, the Navy lost control of a Fire Scout UAS, which eventually violated the airspace here in Washington, D.C. What work is being done to address the challenge of ensuring the safety in the event of a lost link? Anyone?
So the work that we're doing, there would be certain loss link protocols that would come into play so that's where autonomy would take over if there was a loss of the command and control link to the UAS, so that the UAS would either go to a predetermined position in order to reestablish the link or return to base.
Weren't there protocols in place for this particular incident, though, and we still had a problem? Is that correct?
That is correct in that case.
Okay, well, hopefully we can have that taken care of so that this doesn't occur anymore. I'm sure it caused a lot of consternation here in D.C. With that, my time is up. Mr. Maffei, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
And Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I found your questions and answers very enlightening. Clearly, there are some real national security and homeland security elements to this, and of course on 9/11 it was not military airplanes that were taken over, it was civilian airliners, and the same thing could be true. Our biggest threat on these may not be a military craft being taken over in the Middle East, but maybe a civilian one being taken over here. So we want to look at those things. Dr. Toner, you said in your testimony that the FAA will not integrate UAS unless and until we can be assured of the safety of the national airspace will not be degraded, and I assume you mean in all of these respects, and Dr. Wagner echoed that. But given the fact, Dr. Toner, that we have a very aggressive timeline set out for you and the FAA has already missed many of those deadlines, do you believe that you will be able to safely and effectively integrate the UAS into the national airspace by the current deadline of September 2015? And if you're not sure you can, are there things that you need from us in Congress to help make that happen or expedite it?
Our approach is a phased approach, and we're very cognizant that the FAA Act of 2012 called for safe integration by 2015. We view that as a beginning. If you look at aircraft such as the F-22 today, it is not fully integrated. It is a manned aircraft, but it is not fully integrated into the air traffic control system. So we're taking a phased-in approach. In 2015, we will have integration beginning, but as we move towards the next-gen system, there will be new capabilities that make this an even more efficient integration for more varieties of aircraft. So I think the important thing is that we look at it as a rolling approach as we focus on the safe integration and safe interaction of manned and unmanned aircraft.
But what do you need from us? Nothing?
The Congress has given us a lot of attention and a lot of support. We would ask the opportunity to continue to explain the difficulties and challenges and our progress as we're rolling this out.
Okay, thank you very much. The chairman and I both have expressed concerns about privacy and civil liberties related to the equipment on board of these UAS aircraft, surveillance sensors, et cetera. And then I think there's well, let me ask you this. Who is responsible for regulating these issues such as privacy concerns? Dr. Dillingham, do you have an idea of that? Everybody can answer if you have opinions.
Mr. Maffei, we looked into this, and I think at best we can say it's unknown at this point. When we did our work, we asked FAA about it, and FAA said our area is safety, and that's what we're going to focus on. And of course, there are already existing a number of different privacy regulation and laws, but none of them have been tested with regard to UAS. I think this the recent SIR that was or RFP that was put out by FAA to seek comments on privacy issues will be a start on that. And from our perspective, that's one of the big obstacles to integration. That is public acceptance, public education, public concern about how that data will be used.
Yeah, the other two witnesses feel free to answer, but if you want, also address that public acceptance issue, because it also seems there's no agency that's working on education or of the public, et cetera.
Not so much an agency, but some of the industry associations, some of the model airplane associations are trying to educate the public, or at least inform the public. I think one of the things that we keep in mind is no matter what kind of technology is out there for good, there will be some who will find a way to misuse that technology. So it becomes very important that the public recognize, those issues as well.
Anything to add from the other two witnesses? I have one more question, so
just
quickly.
Yes, sir. Just real quickly, while I'm not an attorney or certainly a legal expert on this, we go to a lot of forums where this subject is discussed. And sort of the consensus opinion that I've drawn from this is that, yes, privacy is not the FAA's responsibility. They're focused on safety. There are legal precedents that are set relative to technology and surveillance that these exist. And the legislators and the community really need to identify what the ethical issues are and how these differ from a UAS to a manned aircraft relative to flight operations. And then this issue that Dr. Dillingham mentioned, the public and the media really need to be educated about UAS operations and missions.
Dr. Toner, do you have anything to add? You don't have to. Okay. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, you and I may have to roll up our sleeves and do a little bit of bipartisan work to maybe set a legislative beginning to it. I don't know, but I'd like to look into that with you. One quick question, and it can be answered in writing, but Dr. Toner, I really appreciate the fact that the FAA took the first formal step in selecting the 6 UAS test sites yesterday by releasing the screening information request document to the public. While I realize that this may not be your exact area, nonetheless, I may have some additional questions on it once we sort of review it in terms of trying to get more precision on what you're really looking for. And after I've had the chance, can I get your commitment that we'll receive timely written responses to that?
We will provide a timely response, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Maffei, all of the members of the committee will have the opportunity to give written questions to the witnesses, and hopefully, in fact, I've already talked with them about that, and they're all willing to give us those expeditious answers to all these questions, because I know all of us have questions and all of us have concerns about this. And the American public are just frightened, frankly, about the use of the UAS to possibly have invasions of their privacy, invasions of their civil rights, and I'm extremely interested in making sure that we protect those privacy issues and civil rights issues. It's something that I've been focusing upon for a long period of time, not only in this issue, but through cybersecurity and everything else. So I'm eager to work with you on this issue, Mr. Maffei.
Me too, and certainly, Mr. Chairman, I think you'll agree. We have to at least figure out who the go-to person is in the administration, so that we have, it doesn't fall through the cracks, and that's why I hope to work.
Absolutely. No matter who is in the White House and whatever the administration is, this is an extremely important issue, and it's a constitutional issue for me. Mr. Kramer, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the witnesses. You really have done an excellent job of both efficiently and thoroughly answering the questions in the charter, so I appreciate that very much. I especially appreciate the opportunity to meet you before the hearing. And Dr. Toner, to have somebody who's actually spent New Year's Eve in Hazen, North Dakota as a witness on my first hearing is extraordinarily fortuitous for me, because as you know, in North Dakota we were quite pleased yesterday when the SIR was released. It's been a long wait. Nonetheless, we are grateful for the opportunity to be one of at least the 26 states that apply for the designation. And I would say, given that you spent New Year's Eve in Hazen, North Dakota at one point, you understand how extreme our climate can be, and I hope that you take that into account if you're on the team that chooses where a good place would be to test extreme weather. But I also assure you that in the summertime, the other extreme is the same. I would be interested in just exploring a little further this juxtaposition of the privacy issue with the safety issue, because as I understand it, while the SIR has is it a 60-day window for public comment on the privacy question? Am I correct in that, Dr. Toner? Do you know?
Yes, that is correct.
But does that, so thank you, and then does that have anything to do then with the designation of the test sites? In other words, is it part of the SIR but not part of the criteria to be considered?
We're looking to expand, to get public input on that criteria. we will be evaluating the test site proposals as called for in the SIR and looking to make sure that we're doing a good job, that the offerers are doing a good job in meeting those criteria.
And so then, getting back to some of your earlier criteria, I guess, in your opening statement about the collaboration or coordination and cooperation of various institutions, that would certainly, I would think, fit into some of that.
You know, I can't comment on the collaboration in terms of the proposals themselves. However, you know, from my office perspective, we need everybody sort of all rowing in the same direction on this issue since it's so complex. Sure.
Well, with that, and the point of the question is probably to make the statement, given that you've answered all the questions, the technical questions so well. Again, going back to the criteria, we are in North Dakota, again speaking for my constituents who are very interested in this topic because we're a big aviation state. As you know, we have the School of Aerospace Sciences, Dr. Wagner at the University of North Dakota, and the Aviation School that is very much a part of a team that the governor has put together called the Airspace Integration Team, a state effort to do exactly that, to unify all of the institutions under one collaborative effort to try to get this designation. And that, we think, is second probably to the extreme weather in terms of the criteria. I would have a question, though, about our proximity to Canada. Is that would you consider that a concern or an asset, being a border state? And what kind of collaboration do we have, if any, with the Canadian government if there, as we test the airspace, the national airspace, realizing we deal with a lot of international airspace?
You know, we've laid out in terms of the test sites what we believe are a wide range of criteria that we hope will attract a wide variety of offers, including North Dakota. I could not comment today on the interaction with Canada and any international implications, and I could get back to you if needed.
If you could, that would be great. And Mr. Chairman, again, they've done such a great job answering the questions that I had earlier that I think I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. They've just called votes. We have some time. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can. Mr. Peters, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to serve with you and Mr. Maffei on this committee. I look forward to it. I had a pretty simple question about spectrum. You know, San Diego supports more than 7,100 jobs in the UAS industry, and we are interested in seeing these vehicles being able to be used for environmental monitoring and scientific research. We think they've got great application there. In addition, we're also the home to Qualcomm and interested in the wireless industry. That's our largest private employer. So my question is about the bulk of spectrum resources required from the use of these aircraft, and whether any of you has reviewed what the potential spectrum need will be for the various unmanned aerial systems operating in the United States 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
The FAA has worked with the FCC to reserve some spectrum for the command and control of these vehicles, and we could get you the specifics on that. We believe with our assessment of the market for operation today that you know, that should be adequate, but this is a point that we will be studying to ensure that as well.
I think that's fair and appreciate it, in addition to looking at the privacy concerns raised by the previous gentleman who spoke previously. I'd appreciate an update on that as we go along. And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity and yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Mr. Posey is next in line, but he said he's not interested in asking questions. We appreciate you joining us. Oh, he has one question. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to apologize for being late. We rolled votes from yesterday in the Financial Services Committee, and I had to go do that first.
Well, so. Thank you for being here. So, Mr. Schweigert, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is when you're from Arizona, and you know we actually have a number of manufacturers producing products and those things there. I have a couple different questions. First one, particularly for the FAA, sort of the R&D roadmap and the deadlines and the mechanics that my understanding are supposed to be built in there. Where are we time-wise? Should our expectations be of deliverabilities? What do we expect to see in the next year or two out of that?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I'll probably run out of time to explain the answer. I'm assuming you're talking. Yes, sir. I'm assuming you're talking about the UAS Research Development and Demonstration Roadmap that we published about a year ago, and at that time we said that the challenges we had identified were a good start. They were snapshot in time, and that we would need additional vetting and additional insurance that we would be meeting the needs of the regulatory folks with our research program. During the past year, my folks have worked tirelessly along with the government partners, and we are, I think, very close to the coordination of a set of national goals and objectives, of getting a single point of view or CONOPS that we can use as a measuring stick for our progress. We've set up a framework for how we can prioritize the R&D challenges. We know we have many of them. We want to make sure we cover them all. And quite frankly, we are looking forward to the point where we can share that with the full community.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Doctor, as you go through those sort of challenges, are you going to be publishing updates saying, look, here's what we're seeing, here's our latest status? And I know that's always hard around here. One of the things we have great frustration with is the number of missed deadlines. I think you had one, what was it, September? That we missed?
Yes, in our roadmap report, we did push ourselves a little bit and promise some September data.
Would we be seeing some incremental updates and some incremental publications telling us where you're at?
We have not released incremental publications because it's very important to us. The 5 agencies that we have been working in partnership, it's very important to us that we get agreement with those agencies, and we have done the coordination. We're in the last steps of coordination, and then we think we can release a very comprehensive package.
All right. My friend from Civil Aviation.
Is that me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to Dr. Toner's comments that we did a report a couple of years ago, and we made a recommendation that when the comprehensive plan is developed, that it also include the ability to show progress, to monitor progress towards goals. And we have not seen that comprehensive plan yet. It has been delayed as well. But if our recommendation is adhered to, the kinds of things that you are interested in and asking for should be included. Okay,
Doctor, a slight lark, but it sort of ties in. Being from Arizona, and I actually have this gentleman as a constituent who has a high-end engineer, has lots of resources, has built himself about a 9-foot size flying wing with constant uplink, and I appreciate him when he flies over my house and sends me a text message with photos of my house and what I'm doing in my backyard. What are we seeing also from the hobbyist world? Are they running ahead of us? Are they heading towards a dangerous conflict? What's going on there, and are we about to see also some clash of cultures of people going off on their own?
This is a very sensitive and difficult area, but let me try and respond. The 2012 Reauthorization Act actually prohibited FAA from making regulations related to model aircraft, persons who operate model aircraft. There are existing regulations that suggest that if you operated in accordance with the principles that are there now, that would be okay. And there's a way for FAA to intervene if you operate dangerously. The Model Aircraft Association has issued some guidelines, though voluntary, that that their membership, which I think is over 150,000, adhere to. But it's a different world in terms of modeling, and how they're going to come together is to be determined.
Well, I know I'm beyond time, but Mr. Chairman, what you and I grew up thinking of as a model airplane, these things ain't model airplanes anymore. They're stunning in the scale and complexity. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, absolutely. And the American public are very fearful, concerned, and that's the reason that the news media has been focusing on this issue so long. And I appreciate Dr. Dillingham. I wasn't trying to ignore you, and neither or any of these members, but I trust that you guys are going to continue to monitor and report back to us on an ongoing basis what you find, and please keep us informed. Also, Dr. Wagner, if you would, please provide for the record all of NASA's UAS R&D projects, as well as the FY12 and 13 funding levels for each project. The FAA has been kind enough to provide those for us, but we have not got those records from NASA. So if you would, please provide for those that information to us in an expeditious manner. I thank all the witnesses for y'all's excellent testimony today. That's not only interesting but extremely valuable for us. Members of the committee may have additional questions, as I've talked to y'all in private. We ask for you to respond to those very expeditiously in writing to us. The record will remain open for 2 additional weeks for 2 weeks for additional comments and for written questions from members. I thank y'all. I'm disappointed that we have a vote on that is going to interrupt this extremely interesting topic for me and for the members of the committee, for Americans all over the country. And I thank C-SPAN for coming and helping to broadcast this to the American public so we can get the information out and y'all's valuable testimony. Thank you so much for being here. The witnesses are excused and the hearing is now adjourned.
This was a great start.
You been in the military? No. Okay. Well.